Hello there and happy Friday. My name is Julie Hirschberg. Excuse me, I get to join you live today to talk a little bit about what we're doing and learning here at Reactive. If we haven't met, I am a neurologic physical therapist, the owner and founder of Reactive Therapy and Wellness in the Los Angeles area. And um, at Reactive, we do a lot of education with other healthcare providers, and that includes something that is not happening today, but it should have been happening today, which was my colleagues and coworkers and I. So Chelsea Richardson here at Reactive and Mike Studer, who is our esteemed colleague from Oregon. We put together a presentation for combined sections meeting, which is a huge meeting for physical therapists that happens every year. And we had to cancel it this year. And so we had put in a lot of work looking at the literature, the research, what we know about autonomy, and how to incorporate it into therapy to advance motor learning and participation and engagement. And that it actually should be today at this time in San Antonio, and we're not there. So Chelsea and I shared a little bit of our presentation on Wednesday in an Instagram live. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that I was learning just by reading the literature for this. So that is what we're going to talk about. Really the science, what's the latest science about autonomy. And let's just dive right in. If you have joined us before, you've heard us talk about the optimal theory. So this was published in 2016 by some wonderful colleagues of ours who have done really a lot of research in the area of how we learn and how we perform movements. And the optimal theory of motor control really took years of research and put it into a theoretical construct. And it made it something also that's really useful for us as therapists. So it's called optimizing performance through intrinsic motivation and attention for learning. And that theory takes into account three major pieces to optimize motor learning. Autonomy is a big one, enhanced expectancy, and external focus of attention. So we've talked about these pieces before. We've talked about the optimal theory before, but I wanted to dive into some of the latest understanding in autonomy. So autonomy is the principle that providing a person choice and control over their environment can actually enhance some of their motor learning and their performance. And we can see this in many different ways, and it's been studied in different ways. So it might be in our therapy sessions, providing some control over the practice conditions, even the color of the TheraBand or the order that we do the practice. It's also in the language that we use. That's actually a lot of autonomy. But also just in providing the person some sort of choice. Now, we know that autonomy has some very specific effects. One, it improves a person's sense of self and self-efficacy. It promotes a focus on the task at hand, which is really important if you have a disorder like a functional movement disorder where attention to the body might actually cause the dysfunction. What we also know is that when we provide autonomy, cortisol actually gets down regulated. Dopamine and motivation rise. So this is really important because if we're working with somebody with any kind of disorder, so not even just a neurologic disorder, if we want to drive neuroplasticity and change, we want to drive dopamine and motivation, right? So when I dove into the literature in this area to to prepare for CSM, there were several areas that I explored a lot. And actually Mike Studer was amazing sending articles and ideas and such for this. One of the big things that comes out of the literature is that allowing people to have control or autonomy over their environment is a fundamental need. We know this. The literature shows that it's actually a biological necessity. And if you look at some of the psychological literature and philosophical literature, you can see that having autonomy or control is also just good for autonomy's sake. So providing autonomy, not just for motor learning and participation, but providing autonomy for autonomy's sake. So because this is a fundamental need for people. So that was one of the things, and I chatted with Chelsea about that, but that comes out really clearly in the literature. If you look at some of the literature leading up to the optimal theory, you can see that there's several studies that find that our human motivation, our ability to engage in things is really dependent on us having that perception that our actions actually have an effect on the environment, that we have control over them, and um, and that we have an influence on what is going to happen. Again, a basic psychological need. And you can see this maybe just even in the classroom in learning. Like, this is a lot of the literature that I've read in trying to improve myself as an instructor, a professor, is that having that active learning and engagement and choice improves learning. But this is um, even bigger effects in motor learning. So I want to hit on a couple of articles that recently came out within the last few years. So after Optimal was published, the labs that these esteemed authors work in have put out a lot of other papers. And this first one was really interesting because it looked at running. So I know we talk about neurologic disorders a lot. We talked about the optimal theory a lot. We talk about autonomy, all of these things a lot. But in reality, a lot of the research actually starts in the world of sports and then gets followed up in other things, and gets applied over and over and over again. So this particular study looked at supporting people's autonomy and giving them choices, and what is the effect on their movement efficiency with running. So they had people run at kind of a sub max, so 65% VO2 max for 20 minutes. And here is how simple it was. They gave people the choice to choose 5 of 10 photos and the order that they would be shown on the computer screen during the run. The people in the control group had did not have a choice. They actually had to follow the same choice that their counterparts had chosen. So what they did is not just ask people, well, like, how did that feel, right? So this is what I think is so interesting, is that providing this autonomy changes the physiology. So they measured oxygen consumption and heart rate in both of the groups. What they found is the oxygen consumption and heart rate were significantly lower in the group that was provided choice. Isn't that interesting? So really what they could conclude is providing that autonomy and choice help improve that person's running efficiency. Hello, I would like that, right? So I'm going to be starting training for another marathon. I would like to improve my running efficiency. I need more autonomy then, right? I don't need somebody telling me exactly what to do. I need to make some choices in that. And so this further supports the optimal theory. And the thought, and what's been shown over and over again is that autonomy really facilitates this goal action coupling, meaning our actions linked to the goal and improving the efficiency of it. Now, this was in runners, yes. But these same ideas, excuse me, have been studied again and again and again. We could put this into walking when you have Parkinson's. We could put this in how you're moving up and down the stairs if you have a functional neurologic disorder. By the way, this article is available free full text. It's going to be in the newsletter that we send out today. So if you're not already part of our Reactive Education newsletter, we send out our videos from the week, what we're reading, any links and articles. We send them out every Friday to healthcare providers. And then if you have a neurologic disorder and you love learning this with us, on our reactivept.com website, you can sign up for that newsletter, and we send those out on Monday. The first one's at reactiveeducation.com, by the way. So I'll send you all of these articles. Second one, this one was called More Bang for Your Buck. I love the title of it. This is another one where they were looking at the effect of autonomy. Now, instead of looking at VO2 max, they were looking at surface EMG during an isometric force production. So they had people do strength testing, plantar flexors, in both choice and control conditions. In the choice, they were able to choose the order of the target torques that they were going for. So this would be really easy to do in the clinic if you are doing this anyway. So they get to choose it. In the control condition, they could not. What they found, not that surprising, is the EMG activity was actually lower in the choice condition. Now you might be going, well, don't I want the EMG higher? What they're looking though for is efficiency. And if you can provide the same amount of torque at a lower EMG activity, you're actually getting more bang for your buck, which is why the article is called that. So this one came out in 2016, also by the Great Optimal Group, Wolf and Luthwaite. I will put that in the newsletter. So interesting. So autonomy improves our running efficiency, improves our muscle efficiency. And then this last article, which is really a lovely one that Mike sent me, it's from 2020. This is something that you could think about for yourself as a healthcare provider even, but also within the way you set up therapy. This was looking at workplace gamification. So I know this kind of sounds like it might be out of left field, but hang in there with me. It's not really. So in this one, they did a warehouse task. So you can imagine like an Amazon warehouse, they're sorting and placing packages, highly in need of efficiency type of task. So they were looking at how can we provide more autonomy in the way that people might do this task, and does it increase efficiency? So they added a gamification of the task, and they had little devices, and they could have people either get a goal assigned to them, like a number of boxes in an amount of time, or they could self-set the goal. Here is what is interesting. When the person, the worker, could self-set the goal, their heart rate lowered and their intrinsic motivation for the task rate was raised. Very interesting, right? So when they got to set their own goal, their cortisol lowered, right? Their heart rate lowered. They had that autonomy. And that allowed them to have more cognitive and emotional engagement and improved performance in the task. What if we could do really simple things like give a choice, have that person self-set a goal, and their heart rate lowers? They have less fear. They have a less cortisol response. How important would that be for a person? How much could they actually change? And what we know from the literature is that it does actually improve their performance in learning, and they actually perform more efficiently, more smoothly. They can access more of their automatic movements through that autonomy. So that was a whole lot of literature, some of the optimal literature, some of the things since optimal, really cool gamification study that has come out. Just honestly, like a little drop in the bucket based on all, I think I read over 40 articles to prepare for the CSM presentation. But a little bit to show you the evidence of how providing even just a little bit of autonomy can make such a big difference in the world of people that we are working with. So thank you for joining with me for that today, and for me getting to share a little bit of our presentation. I do want to let you know, if you love this application of things like autonomy, of the optimal, of some of those soft skill components of therapy, I wanted to remind you that Mike Studer, we're hosting him for a course in March. So just in a month, actually. And it's called Neuropracticity 4.0 Secrets of the Soft Skills. And this is for that therapist who is really looking to change outcomes for people that they work with by manipulating some of these variables like autonomy, and doing it skillfully and practicing it and getting mentored by Mike Studer. So we're really excited that that course is coming up in March. It's called Neuropracticity 4.0, and you can find it on our Reactive Education website. We're really excited to work with Mike too. That's one of the things that I am sad about, is not being up there on the stage and presenting with Mike today, but we're going to see him soon. So I want to thank you for joining me today. As usual, you can get all of the resources that I said today in our newsletter. Comes out this Friday. I'll send you all those free full text articles with that. And thanks you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend.